Hello there, my name's Vince from My Mate Vince, and in this video today we're going to try to fix up this old Panasonic DECT phone. So these are the digital cordless phones. I bought this for my dad years and years ago. It came in a twin pack. I remember back then, must have been the early 2000s, that there was something special because I used to work for BT at the time, and it was always about running extensions, you know, physically tacking a wire to the skirting board and around the door frames and stuff. So it was nice when these came out because it gave customers the option, obviously making running extensions redundant, but it gave customers the option to do it wirelessly, and they do work really, really well. It's not kind of like other things like, you know, in my opinion, power line adapters are never the same as running an Ethernet cable throughout your house, but these really do just work. I use them myself, not this particular brand, but something very, very similar. So my dad's been happy with them for years and years and years. They've given service for years. I think the batteries have been replaced a couple of times, because I suppose they would have been over the last 15, 16 years. But he said to me that one of the phones had failed, and I said maybe it was the batteries. I wasn't around there at the time. So he went down the road and he bought these ones here. Now what's interesting is, I don't know, it might be just the packaging, but that looks really, really old for a new product. Do you know what I mean? That looks like it's been on the shelf for years, but I could be wrong. The reason I'm a little bit dubious is because where he lives, although it's a London suburb, so house prices are expensive enough, it's a kind of deprived type of area, and a lot of people are out desperate to make a bit of money. Prime example is that he bought himself a mobile phone, and he said to me that the charger doesn't fit into his wall outlets. I mean, this is embarrassing now. And I was like, what do you mean? I said, it has to fit. And I was like, well, unless he wasn't very good at explaining it over the phone, and he's not good enough to be taking pictures and sending them over to me. So I was thinking, what, have they sent him some kind of like EU plug or something instead? Anyway, he took it down to a local shop that specialises in gadgety type things. And the lady said to him that she's never seen that before, and sold him a charger for £15. That's all you needed to do. You telling me that somebody that works in a shop selling chargers and items didn't know that that's all you had to do? That's for a UK 3-pin plug. Now that really peed me off, because what sort of business are you running where an old gentleman comes in and you wouldn't just do that? I know people would be like, no, it serves him right, like you should be penalised for not knowing stuff. But I don't know, I think that's wrong. That if I had a business doing that sort of stuff, and if somebody came in, it doesn't matter what their age, colour, religion, I would say to them, there you go, it will work now. And then I would hope that they would come back for repeat business because they would trust me. So I don't think that's a good way to do business. Anyway, this phone here, he said he put the batteries in and it still doesn't work. So let me just show you the old batteries. Let me know what you think. Do you think stuff like that is fair? Or do you think that's a bit underhand? Right, so there you go, completely dead. And if I put the new batteries in, it's also completely dead. So first things first, let's just double check the batteries, because I'm not confident that these look new. They could have discharged themselves on the shelf for years and years and years. So let's go into volts DC. Right, well, there's nothing in that battery there. But there is in that battery, are these 1.2? Yeah, 1.2 volts. Now that's weird. So we've got voltage in one, but not the other. Let's check these ones. These were the ones that came out of it. Voltage. Well, look at that. So that's got one good battery and one bad battery. Let's put these two in, because these are the two good ones. So is something in here causing the batteries to fail? Yeah, there's nothing there whatsoever. Right, okay, let's put those two to one side. I'm just going to put these two away for a moment. Let's see if we have any voltage actually in this here. 12 volts. 12 volts. Well, mind you, I suppose this is going to step it down to the voltage that it needs to charge. Right, so that's working. I wonder what should it be. output 6 volts. Is there a way that I can measure when it's on here what it's actually getting? Oh no, because it's going to go through there. Well, actually, no, I might be able to. I wonder, is the batteries getting any charge at all? No. I presume the bottom's just joined there. There you go, yeah, 1.6 volts. So the battery should be charging. So what's going on? 1.6 volts at the bottom. Let's go to ohms a minute. And so that looks okay. Let's go this side. Ooh, is that not low? 8 ohms short. Right, okay. I wonder whether there's something on the board putting a short on this, which is killing the battery. So, a couple of screws, and hopefully then it will all unclip. Right, let's undo a few more screws. Oh, so the top is going to be a short. So yeah, because these are joined anyway. So it's on here. So if the battery's getting a charge, why are the batteries not charged up? Hold on a minute. I'm wondering if this is actually, if it is faulty. I'll tell you what, let's put the good batteries back in. And I want to put it, because look, that there is joined anyway. Try to get a reading in here. No, so it's a battery contact problem. What's going on? Why is it the batteries look okay? Well, let's try and go on here. Right, there's no voltage coming out of those batteries. So, we know the batteries themselves are testing all right. We know that these two are in contact with each other, so it's going to be series. So let's just double check that. Yes. Right, they're in contact with each other. So now, are you just making a bad contact? There we go. It's just a bad contact. Yeah, there we go. What? Right, okay. Now, let's see. Let's get some white vinegar on that. So obviously, one of these batteries must have leaked a tiny bit. Right, the reason I'm using white vinegar on this is because it is an acid, and these batteries here are alkaline, and so it will neutralize any of the corrosion that's there. I'll be honest with you, extremely boring fix. I do apologise. Part of me thinks don't bother releasing it, but at the same time, it is a fix, and my dad's going to be happy that it's fixed. So a lot of these would be thrown away, and even if people watch a video, they'd be like, oh, well, I've cleaned the battery contacts. It's not that, but sometimes you have to do a little bit more. You might have to pry them out a little bit. So yeah, that's it. Let me get some IPA, and I'm just going to give it a tiny little clean, and while I'm here, I might as well clean up the button pads as well. Give this all a nice bit of clean. I'm going to get a bit of paper to rub that on. In fact, I can use this here. I've got this here. I'm not going to do too hard. I just want to remove a little bit in case there's some oxidization on it. That's that. And rub a bit of paper over here. This all looks lovely and clean anyway. Just going to use some isopropyl alcohol. Might as well clean up the grime while I'm here.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I came on to someday find that vintage love. I kept on looking, but everyone's such a bore. And out of a sudden, you came through the door. At the next table, your whiskey neat. The lights were dimmed as our eyes met, moves on me. And forevermore, I like to share that vintage dream.
Okay, so here we go. Let's pop these in. We'll just need to clean up the back. Right, it's come up much cleaner than it was before, and you can see now that it's working. Let's see if it's charging. Well, it's fully charged anyway. So you might be wondering why on earth we've gone from having a fixed phone to suddenly me putting flux around the chip. Bear with me. There was 30 minutes of footage that didn't even get deleted. I didn't even press record. It's so annoying when you go to edit something and you realise you have 1 second of footage. So what happens is, obviously you start recording, you press record, then you stop recording, you close the viewfinder. Sometimes you have 1 second of footage, and that's where you think you've hit record but you haven't, and then at the end of recording you hit record again to stop it, but in this instance I actually recorded, and then when you close the viewfinder it stops recording. So whenever you've got 1 second of footage, you know that you've got a problem. Anyway, so what happened was I put the phone on the charger, and although it was showing full, after a little while it then started to charge, and it was weird. It went down to 1 bar then and started to charge all the way up. I left it for a couple of hours, and when I looked back at it, it had no display, and I could not get the display back. So every single time I took the batteries out and put them back in, I'd get the beeps off the phone, or every time I put it on the charging dock, I'd get the beeps, but nothing was displaying, so you couldn't see the numbers you were ringing. Now, when I looked at the main base unit, which is still at my dad's, that also has no display. And when I mentioned it to him, he didn't even realise, because he uses the phone like an old-fashioned phone, where if somebody rings you, you pick it up and answer, and when you go to ring somebody, you just dial the number, just like you would do on a phone years ago that had no display. So it doesn't actually matter to him. But it matters to me why the display's not working, because I want to know why. I look around the chip and I find a tiny little bit of corrosion on the bottom legs of the chip where it meets the batteries, you know, where the bottom side of the battery is there. So I use some IPA and I clean it all up, and it still makes no difference. I've still got no display. I then get a soldering iron and I leave it rested on some of the capacitors like the big caps and also some of the small tantalum ones, and also some of the small ceramic ones, just to see whether it's a heat related thing on capacitors, and it still didn't make a difference. So what I'm thinking is, could there be corrosion? If there was corrosion on the legs of the chip, could corrosion have got underneath the chip that I can't see? Maybe there's loads of traces. I thought this chip would be easy to take off because the board's so thin, but honestly it was like working on an Xbox. Well, I haven't worked on a Series X, but I've worked on Xbox One X, and that's a nightmare to take components off because the board's so thick. This was just like that. This chip would not budge. It took loads of heat and quite a few rounds of flux before I managed to get the chip off. Anyway, when I eventually got the chip off, there was no damage done, but I realised that there's very few traces underneath the chip, and the ones that are there look absolutely perfect. So it was a big waste of time. So I basically add some more flux. I just tin up the pads with some leaded solder, add some more flux around, and I just use a soldering iron to get the chip back on rather than using hot air. And lo and behold, I put it back together and it's working. So that's where we are now. The phone is fully working, but it's not going to be a lasting repair, is it? Because I haven't actually fixed anything. I fixed the fact that the phone wasn't working. That was corrosion on the battery terminals, and the fact that the battery terminals, I think, were a little bit flat. So by kind of prising them out a bit, I've given them a little bit more contact against the batteries. So the phone will work just like his other one, but I don't think the display will last because I haven't actually done anything to fix the display. Obviously, it's heat related. I think maybe the chip's failing, especially if the other phone, which hasn't had any leak-in batteries, has no display. I would say that the main chip may be breaking down after all these years, or maybe there's a capacitor somewhere which is failing, and the phone still works, but it's not sending power through correctly to the screen. The problem is, I can't pinpoint that capacitor. I don't know which one it is because I've applied heat to them with the soldering iron and it didn't make a difference. But when I applied huge heat to the actual board, then it did make a difference. So yeah, big I don't know on this one. Right now it's working, so what more can I do? But I just don't think the display will last because, as I say, if I change capacitors over and the display started working, happy days. But I didn't. I just applied heat to the chip and it started to work. So yeah, that's it. Let's finish up this video now just to show you it fully working. So it's the next day now, and as you can see, the display is still there. So, what do I think was the problem? I think there was two problems here. I think the natural fault was that this battery here failed, and then when my dad bought the two replacement batteries, this battery had already failed in the packaging and then proceeded to leak when it was in here over the next 2 or 3 weeks, however long it took for me to go and collect this phone here. I think the blank display has been on this phone for ages because I know his main handset phone also has a blank display. I did find corrosion on the chip, but it wasn't. I cleaned it up. I was expecting to find maybe more corrosion underneath the chip, but there wasn't anything there. So I don't believe the chip was at fault. But saying that, by applying heat to it, we have now fixed it. So either the chip is faulty, and by heating it up, we've done a short-term fix, which will probably go blank again in a few days or weeks, or maybe, and probably more likely, there's some capacitors that have failed on the board somewhere, and by applying all the heat to the chip, we've now put heat into the capacitors, and we've given them life again for a short amount of time. So this video was filmed back in November 2022, which is around 8 months ago now, so I've got the ability to tell you the long-term outcome of this repair. The long-term outcome was that I asked my dad about 3 weeks later, is the display still working? He went and looked and he said no, but the phones were still working. Anyway, shortly after that, the other handset started to play up. I got him to swap around the batteries. I was explaining all this over the phone, and he did that, and he said it still didn't work. So you know what? I cut my losses. Life's too short. I went and bought a triple pack from Amazon for £50-something, fitted them, and everything's working perfectly. The replacement pack, the quality is not there. They're really lightweight. When you go to charge them, one little sneeze and the whole thing will topple over. But saying that, they do work, and they were quite cheap as well. So yeah, unfortunately this fix wasn't a fix. I probably could have fixed the other handset. I'm just sort of thinking after 20 years, they've probably reached their limits, their life. So yeah, they've been recycled. Saying that, you say that as if it's a good thing. Going by the internet, I don't know how true this is, and I presume it depends on different products, but only around 15% off electronic waste is actually recycled, so the metals and stuff are taken out. I think 85% is basically incinerated, which is really bad, especially when you think about the junk that is made. You know, like the sort of like, you know, we have fast fashion. There's also a kind of fast like electronic stuff as well, isn't it, where people only buy stuff knowing it's only going to last a couple of years, and of course you think, oh well, it's getting recycled. Well, it's not really. 85% of it is not. So yeah, bit bad really. Enjoy yourself everyone. I'll see you again very soon. Take care.